The rope sailed through the air, missing its target by several feet as Abigail Keller let out a groan of frustration. The 20th failed attempt that morning left her standing in the middle of her family's ranch with her hands on her hips, glaring at the wooden practice post as if it had personally offended her. It was 1875 in the unforgiving territory of Wyoming, and a woman who couldn't handle a lasso was as useful as a rattlesnake in a rocking chair, at least according to her father. "You're letting go too soon," came a deep voice from behind her. Abigail whirled around, her chestnut hair flying out of its loose braid as she faced the source of the unsolicited advice. A tall man leaned against the fence post, his wide-brimmed hat shading eyes that crinkled with amusement. She recognized him immediately: Adam Evans, the new ranch hand her father had hired last week. "I don't recall asking for your opinion, Mr. Evans," she replied, her cheeks flushing partly from embarrassment and partly from the way his gaze seemed to see right through her. "Just offering some assistance, Miss Keller." He pushed himself off the fence and sauntered toward her, dust kicking up from his well-worn boots with each step. "Your father mentioned you've been trying to learn." Abigail sighed, looking down at the lasso in her hands. Her father, Thomas Keller, owned one of the largest cattle ranches in the territory, and as his only child, his only daughter, no less, she was determined to prove she could run it someday. But a rancher who couldn't rope a steer was no rancher at all. "I've been at it for weeks," she admitted reluctantly, twisting the rope in her gloved hands. "Every morning before dawn and every evening before sunset, the cattle laugh at me, I swear it." Adam's lips curved into a smile that wasn't quite a grin but held all the warmth of the Wyoming sun. "I've been throwing a lasso since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Maybe I could show you," she hesitated. At 23, Abigail wasn't accustomed to accepting help from men, especially not handsome ones with eyes the color of prairie skies. In her experience, help from men always came with expectations she wasn't willing to meet. "It's just a rope trick, Miss Keller," he added softly, as if reading her thoughts. Nothing more. Something in his voice's sincerity perhaps made her nod. "Very well, Mr. Evans, show me your expertise." Adam stepped forward, taking the coiled rope from her hands. Their fingers brushed briefly, and Abigail tried to ignore the unexpected flutter in her chest. She watched as he demonstrated, his movements fluid and practiced as he built the loop and swung it over his head before releasing it to catch perfectly around the wooden post. "It's all in the wrist," he explained, retrieving the rope and handing it back to her. "And timing. You've got to feel the rhythm of it." Abigail took the rope and attempted to mimic his movements, but her loop collapsed before she could even begin to swing it. "May I?" Adam asked, stepping closer. She nodded, suddenly aware of how tall he was standing next to her. He moved behind her, and before she could protest, his arm came over hers, his large hand covering her smaller one on the rope. "Like this," he said, his voice close to her ear as he guided her through the motion. "Feel how the loop stays open, that's what you want." Abigail tried to concentrate on the lesson and not on the warmth of his chest against her back or the scent of leather and pine that surrounded him. Together they swung the lasso, his movements guiding hers, and when he whispered, "Now," they released in unison. The rope sailed through the air and landed perfectly around the post. "I did it," Abigail exclaimed, forgetting herself enough to turn in his arms with a brilliant smile. Their faces were inches apart, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, something that made Abigail's heart beat faster than it had any right to. Adam cleared his throat and stepped back, breaking the spell. "You did," he agreed, tipping his hat. "Just needed the right guidance." "Abigail," her father's voice boomed across the yard. "The Hendersons are here about that bull." "Coming, Pa," she called back, then turned to Adam with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Evans. Perhaps we could continue the lesson another time." "I'd be happy to, Miss Keller." He nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Anytime." As Abigail hurried toward the main house, she couldn't help but glance back at Adam, who was already returning to his duties. There was something about that man, something beyond his skill with a lasso, that intrigued her. Something that made her think that perhaps, just perhaps, these lessons might lead to more than just roping cattle. The next morning found Abigail at the same practice post, the sun barely cresting the eastern mountains. She'd risen earlier than usual, hoping for some private practice before the ranch came fully alive. The crisp, autumn air bit at her cheeks as she twirled the lasso overhead, trying to recall Adam's instructions from the day before. "Your form's improving," came his voice, and she nearly dropped the rope in surprise. "Mr. Evans," she acknowledged, lowering the lasso, "you're up early." "As are you." He approached, already dressed for the day's work in a faded blue shirt and worn denims. "Thought I might find you here." "I'm determined to master this," she said, setting her jaw with the stubbornness that had made her father both proud and exasperated over the years. Adam nodded approvingly. "That's a quality that'll serve you well out here. Mind if I watch?" Abigail felt a flutter of nervousness but squared her shoulders. "I'd welcome the feedback." She began again, building the loop as he'd shown her, focusing on keeping her wrist loose. The lasso sailed through the air, missing the post by a mere foot much closer than her previous attempts. "Better," Adam commented. "You're rushing the release. Take a breath before you let go." Abigail retrieved the rope and tried again, this time consciously pausing before releasing. The loop flew true, catching the very top of the post before sliding down. "I did it," she exclaimed, turning to Adam with delight shining in her eyes. "Almost," he corrected with a smile. "Let me show you again." This time when he moved behind her, Abigail was prepared for the proximity, though not for the way her pulse quickened as his arm came over hers. His hand guided hers as they built the loop together. "Feel the weight of it," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Let it become part of your arm." They swung the lasso together, their movements synchronized. The rope spun above them, creating a perfect circle against the backdrop of the dawn sky. "Now," Adam said softly, and they released. The lasso sailed through the air, landing perfectly around the post with a satisfying thwack. "Much better," he said, stepping back. "You're a quick learner, Miss Keller." "Abigail," she said impulsively. "If we're to continue these lessons, I think you might as well call me Abigail." Adam's eyes widened slightly, but his expression quickly softened. "Abigail," he repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue. "Then I insist you call me Adam." A comfortable silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the call of a meadowlark. "How did you learn to throw a lasso so well?" Abigail asked, beginning to coil the rope again. Adam's gaze turned distant for a moment. "My father taught me. He was a ranch hand in Texas. Said a man who couldn't throw a lasso wasn't worth his salt in cattle country. And your mother passed when I was young. It was just Pa and me until the fever took him 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," Abigail said softly. "My mother died birthing me. I never knew her." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It's a hard country for women. It's a hard country for anyone who isn't strong enough," she countered, "and I intend to be strong enough." A smile tugged at the corner of Adam's mouth. "I don't doubt that for a second, Abigail." The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted their conversation. Abigail turned to see one of the ranch hands, a grizzled older man named Frank, riding toward them. "Miss Keller," he called, tipping his hat as he reined in his horse. "Your pa's looking for you, says there's trouble with the north fence line." "I'll be right there," she replied, then turned back to Adam. "Same time tomorrow, I'll be here," he promised. As Abigail hurried toward the stable to saddle her horse, she couldn't help but reflect on how just a day ago, Adam Evans had been merely another hired hand. Now, somehow, he'd become the first thing she thought about when she woke and the last before she slept. The north fence line had indeed been damaged, likely by rustlers testing the ranch's defenses. Thomas Keller was furious, pacing the length of the dining table that evening as Abigail served their supper. 3 steers gone," he fumed. "Bold as brass, cutting my fence in broad daylight." "We'll strengthen the patrols, Pa," Abigail said calmly, placing a plate of roast beef before him. "Perhaps we should ask some of the men to sleep out by the north pasture for a while." Her father paused his pacing to look at her with a mixture of pride and concern. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, girl. That's why I worry about you taking over this place someday. Rustlers, drought, wolves, this land will take everything from you if you let it." "I won't let it," she promised, sitting across from him. "I'll make you proud." Thomas sighed, his weathered face softening. You already do, Abby. I just want you safe. Maybe if you'd consider Jasper Wilson's proposal, Pa, Abigail interrupted firmly. We've discussed this. I won't marry Jasper Wilson or any man simply to secure my future. When I marry, it will be on my terms. And what terms are those? Her father asked, cutting into his beef. Abigail considered the question. What did she want in a husband? Before yesterday, she might have said respect, kindness, a willingness to see her as an equal. Now, unbidden, the image of Adam guiding her arm, his steady presence behind her flashed in her mind. Someone who doesn't try to change me, she said finally. Someone who stands beside me, not in front of me. Thomas grunted, unconvinced. Mighty particular for a woman in Wyoming territory. Abigail smiled. I learned stubbornness from the best, Pa. The next morning, Abigail rose before dawn again, but this time she was waylaid by Mrs. Hannigan, their housekeeper, who needed help with a batch of preserves before they spoiled. By the time she made it to the practice post, the sun was well up, and she feared Adam might have given up waiting. To her surprise and pleasure, he was there, patiently working with his own lasso, demonstrating increasingly complex tricks for some of the younger ranch hands. He caught sight of her approaching and dismissed the boys with a nod. Thought you might have forgotten, he said, a teasing lilt to his voice. Mrs. Hannigan's preserves wait for no woman, Abigail replied with a smile. I see you've been entertaining the youngsters. Just passing time, Adam said, coiling his rope. Ready for today's lesson. They spent the next hour practicing, with Adam occasionally placing his arm over hers to correct her technique. Each time he did, Abigail found it harder to concentrate on the lasso and easier to notice the strength in his forearms, the calluses on his hands that spoke of years of honest work. You're improving rapidly, he commented, as she successfully roped the post for the third time in a row. Soon you won't need my help at all. The thought brought an unexpected pang of disappointment. Perhaps, she said, but I still have much to learn. The cattle won't stand still like this post. Adam's eyes crinkled at the corners. No, they certainly won't. Tell you what, tomorrow, if you're agreeable, we could try roping from horseback. That's where the real skill comes in. I'd like that, Abigail replied, perhaps too quickly. A commotion near the main house drew their attention. Several riders were approaching at speed, and Abigail recognized her father among them, his face grim. Something's wrong, she murmured, already moving toward them. Adam fell into step beside her. I'll come with you. They reached the house just as the riders dismounted. Thomas Keller's face was thunderous as he handed his reins to one of the hands. Pa, what's happened? Abigail called. Wilson's men caught one of our hands cutting their fence, he growled. Claim he was rustling. Abigail's heart sank. Jasper Wilson owned the neighboring ranch, and relations had been strained ever since she'd rejected his marriage proposal 6 months ago. Who? She asked. Young Billy, one of the other riders supplied. They're holding him at the Wilson place until the sheriff can ride out from town. Billy wouldn't steal, Abigail said firmly. Billy was barely 18, a good-natured boy who joined them just last spring. This is just Jasper making trouble. Thomas rubbed his jaw, conflicted. Maybe so, but we need to tread carefully. Sheriff's 3 days ride out dealing with that business in Clearwater. We can't leave Billy with them for 3 days, Adam spoke up, surprising everyone. Wilson's foreman has a mean streak a mile wide. Thomas regarded Adam thoughtfully. You worked the Wilson spread before coming here, didn't you, Evans? Adam nodded. For 2 months. Left when I saw how they treated their hands. Then you know the layout, Thomas said, decision forming. I'll ride over with Frank and Hank, see if we can talk some sense into Wilson. I'm coming too, Abigail declared. Absolutely not, her father shot back. Wilson's still sore about you turning him down. Your presence would only complicate matters. But no arguments, Abigail, Thomas said firmly. Stay here and keep things running. Evans, you're with me. Your knowledge of Wilson's place might come in handy. Abigail opened her mouth to protest further but stopped when Adam caught her eye, giving a slight shake of his head. She reluctantly nodded. Be careful, Pa, she said instead. As the men prepared to ride out, Adam found a moment to speak privately with Abigail. Your father's right about Wilson, he said in a low voice. The man's dangerous when crossed, especially where you're concerned. What do you mean? Abigail asked, surprised. Adam's expression hardened. The way he talked about you at the ranch, it wasn't respectful. It's part of why I left." A chill ran down Abigail's spine. She'd always found Jasper Wilson unpleasant, but this suggested something darker. "Bring Billy home safe," she said, "and watch out for my father. He's not as young as he thinks he is." "I will," Adam promised, his eyes serious. "And when I return, we'll have that horseback lesson." With that, he mounted up and joined the others, leaving Abigail to watch them ride away with a sense of foreboding she couldn't quite explain. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Abigail threw herself into ranch work, checking the repaired north fence, helping Mrs. Hannigan with household tasks, and even assisting the cook with dinner preparations. Anything to keep her mind off the men's mission to the Wilson ranch. As dusk approached, she found herself on the front porch, eyes fixed on the horizon, watching for riders. When she finally spotted them, her heart leapt but quickly sank again. There were only 3 returning, not 4. She ran to meet them as they reached the yard, immediately noting her father's grim expression and the absence of both Adam and Billy. "Pa, what happened? Where's Adam and Billy?" Thomas dismounted slowly, wincing slightly. "Wilson refused to release the boy. Says he has evidence of rustling and wants to wait for the sheriff." "And Adam?" Abigail pressed, dread pooling in her stomach. "Evans stayed behind," Frank explained, shooting a concerned glance at Thomas. "Wilson offered a deal he'd release Billy if Evans would work off the boy's debt for a month." "What?" Abigail gasped. "That's ridiculous. Adam agreed to this." Thomas nodded wearily. "Said it was the only way to get Billy out without bloodshed. Wilson had too many men and they were all armed." "So Adam's essentially Wilson's prisoner now," Abigail said, anger rising in her voice. "And you let this happen?" "It wasn't my decision to make," Thomas replied sharply. "Evans is a grown man. He made his choice. A choice he shouldn't have had to make. We need to go back, Pa. We need to get him out of there." Thomas shook his head. "Wilson gave his word Evans wouldn't be harmed as long as he worked the month. We go in there guns blazing and we'll just make things worse. We wait for the sheriff." 3 days, Abigail murmured, thinking aloud. "Adam will be at Wilson's for 3 days before the sheriff even knows what's happened." "Evans can handle himself," Frank offered reassuringly. "He's a tough one." But Abigail wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was already racing, forming a plan. If her father wouldn't help Adam, then she would have to do it herself. That night, after the house had gone quiet, Abigail changed into her riding clothes and packed a small bag with essentials. She knew the Wilson ranch well enough. She'd visited once when Jasper was courting her, before his true nature became apparent. The bunkhouse, where Adam would likely be kept, was on the east side of the property. She slipped out to the stable and saddled her mare, Penny, a quick and sure-footed Palomino. As she led the horse out, a voice startled her. "Going somewhere, Miss Keller?" Abigail whirled to find Billy standing in the shadows, his young face still bearing a bruise from his time at Wilson's. "Billy," she exhaled in relief, "you should be resting." "Can't rest knowing Mr. Evans took my place," the boy said, eyes downcast. "It ain't right." "No, it isn't," Abigail agreed, "which is why I'm going to bring him back." Billy's eyes widened. "Alone, Miss Keller, Wilson's men. They're not good people." "I don't plan to confront them directly," she assured him. "I just need to get a message to Adam, maybe help him escape if possible." Billy hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not," Abigail said firmly. "You've been through enough already. With respect, Miss Keller, I know where they'll be keeping him. I know which guards are likely to be asleep at their posts, and I owe him." Abigail studied the determined set of the boy's jaw and realized he wouldn't be dissuaded. "Very well. But you follow my lead." "Understood," Billy nodded, already moving to saddle his own horse. They rode out under the cover of darkness, taking a circuitous route to avoid being spotted by any of Wilson's men who might be watching the boundaries between the properties. The journey took longer this way, but by midnight, they were approaching the Wilson ranch from the cover of a small copse of trees to the east. "The hands' quarters are there," Billy whispered, pointing to a long, low building about 100 yards away. "But they won't be keeping Mr. Evans with the regular hands. More likely he's in the old storage shed. That's where they kept me." Abigail nodded, her eyes scanning the darkened ranch. A single lantern burned in the main house, but otherwise the place seemed quiet. How many guards? She asked. Usually just one at night making rounds, Billy replied. If we're lucky, it'll be old Pete. He tends to fall asleep around midnight. They tethered their horses in the trees and crept closer, staying low and using the shadows for cover. As they neared the storage shed, Abigail could make out a figure slumped in a chair outside the door. Old Pete, just as Billy had predicted, his chin resting on his chest in slumber. Wait here, Abigail whispered to Billy. If something goes wrong, ride back and get my father. Before he could protest, she slipped away, moving silently toward the shed. Years of ranch work had made her light on her feet, and she managed to circle around behind the building without disturbing the sleeping guard. A small window at the back, barred but not shuttered, offered a glimpse inside. Adam, she called softly, pressing close to the bars. A shuffling sound came from within, and then Adam's face appeared at the window, his expression transforming from wariness to astonishment. Abigail, what in God's name are you doing here? Rescuing you, of course, she replied, unable to suppress a smile despite the circumstances. You shouldn't be here, he hissed, glancing nervously toward the front of the shed. If Wilson finds you, he won't, she assured him. We came carefully, Billy's with me. Adam's face darkened. You brought the boy back here, after what I did to get him out, he insisted, Abigail explained. And we needed his knowledge of the place. Now, can these bars be removed? Adam shook his head. They're set deep, and even if I could get out, Wilson would just come after me and your ranch. He's looking for any excuse. Then what do we do? Abigail asked, frustration creeping into her voice. I'm not leaving you here for a month. Adam's expression softened. I appreciate the sentiment, truly, but I gave my word I'd work the month in exchange for Billy's freedom. I won't go back on that. A promise made under duress isn't binding, Abigail argued. Maybe not legally, Adam conceded, but it matters to me. Besides, Wilson may be many things, but he's not foolish enough to harm me outright. The sheriff would have questions. Abigail bit her lip, conflicted. She hadn't expected Adam to refuse rescue. There must be something I can do, she said finally. Adam seemed to consider something, then spoke carefully. There might be. Wilson's been having trouble with his banker in town. Rumor has it he's overextended, needs capital quickly. That's likely why he's so keen on acquiring your father's land. Pa would never sell to him, Abigail said firmly. No, but if Wilson were to find himself in a position where he needed to curry favor with the bank. Adam let the implication hang. Understanding dawned on Abigail. My father has a good relationship with Mr. Peterson at the bank. If we could convince Peterson to apply some pressure, it might make Wilson more amenable to releasing me early, Adam finished. It's worth a try. A noise from the front of the shed, the guard stirring, made them both tense. I need to go, Abigail whispered. I'll speak to my father about the bank first thing tomorrow. Be careful, Adam urged, and Abigail? Yes, his eyes held hers through the bars, intense and earnest. Thank you for coming, it means more than I can say. Something in his gaze sent warmth spreading through her chest. I couldn't leave you here. I'm beginning to see that, he replied softly. Now go before you're discovered. Abigail reluctantly backed away from the window, rejoining Billy in the shadows. They made their way back to their horses without incident and rode for home, the first hints of dawn breaking on the horizon as they approached the Keller ranch. To Abigail's dismay, her father was waiting for them in the yard, his face a storm of worry and anger. Where in tarnation have you been? He demanded as they dismounted. I've had men searching half the county. We went to Wilson's, Abigail admitted, seeing no point in lying, to check on Adam. Thomas's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. You rode onto Wilson's land in the dead of night. Have you lost your mind, girl? We were careful, Mr. Keller, Billy interjected. Nobody saw us. That's not the point, Thomas snapped. Wilson's dangerous, especially where Abigail is concerned. If he'd caught you, but he didn't, Abigail interrupted. And now we have information that might help Adam. Wilson's in trouble with the bank, Pa, if you spoke to Mr. Peterson. Thomas's anger faded as he processed this. Peterson did mention something about Wilson missing payments. You think we could use that? It's worth trying, Abigail said, relieved that her father was listening. Adam seemed to think it might work. Thomas nodded slowly. I'll ride into town today, speak with Peterson, but Abigail, his voice turned stern again, no more midnight excursions. Promise me. I promise, she agreed, though a small part of her wondered if she could keep it if Adam remained in danger. Thomas rode into town that morning, returning by late afternoon with cautiously optimistic news. Mr. Peterson had confirmed that Jasper Wilson was indeed in financial straits and had agreed to send a letter requesting an immediate meeting regarding his outstanding loans. Peterson says Wilson will likely have to sell off some assets to cover his debts, Thomas explained over dinner. He's been living beyond his means for years. How does this help Adam? Abigail asked, pushing her food around her plate. Wilson needs allies right now, not enemies, Thomas replied. Peterson has agreed to mention that the bank values its relationship with our ranch and would look favorably on Wilson if he were to resolve this situation with Evans amicably. Abigail's spirits lifted slightly. When will Peterson send the letter? It's already gone out. We should hear something within a day or two. Those 2 days were some of the longest of Abigail's life. She tried to focus on her regular duties, but her thoughts constantly strayed to Adam, wondering how he was being treated if he was safe. She practiced with her lasso alone, remembering the feel of his arm guiding hers, his steady presence behind her. On the morning of the 3rd day, a rider approached from the direction of the Wilson ranch. Abigail was in the yard, hanging laundry with Mrs. Hannigan when she spotted him. Her heart leapt when she recognized Wilson's foreman, a hard-faced man named Dawson. Thomas emerged from the barn as Dawson reined in his horse. Keller, the foreman greeted curtly. Got a message from Mr. Wilson. Let's hear it then, Thomas replied, his tone equally curt. Dawson reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Mr. Wilson says he's reconsidered the terms of Evans's employment. He's willing to release him today, given certain banking considerations have come to light. Abigail exchanged a triumphant glance with her father. Their plan had worked. When can we expect him? Thomas asked. That's the thing, Dawson said, an unpleasant smile playing at his lips. Mr. Wilson wants Miss Keller to come collect him personally, says it's only proper since Evans seems to be teaching her some roping skills. Abigail tensed. How did Wilson know about her lessons with Adam? Thomas's expression darkened. My daughter isn't going anywhere near Wilson's property. Then I guess Evans stays where he is, Dawson shrugged, turning his horse. Mr. Wilson was quite clear either Miss Keller comes to collect him by sundown today or the deal's off. I'll go, Abigail said quickly, before her father could respond further. Absolutely not, Thomas growled. Pa, we can't leave Adam there, she argued. And I won't be alone, you'll come with me, along with some of our men. Wilson won't try anything with witnesses present. Thomas hesitated, clearly torn between concern for his daughter and a desire to help Adam. I'll bring 6 armed men, he finally conceded. And you'll stay on your horse the entire time. We get Evans and leave immediately. Is that understood? Abigail nodded, relief washing over her. Understood, Dawson sneered. I'll let Mr. Wilson know you'll be arriving this afternoon. As he rode away, Thomas turned to Abigail with concern etched on his features. I don't like this, Abby. Wilson's up to something. Maybe, she acknowledged, but we'll be prepared and we'll get Adam back. They rode out after lunch, Thomas, Abigail, and 6 of their most trusted hands, all armed and alert. Abigail felt a mixture of anxiety and determination as they approached the Wilson ranch. What if this was a trap? What if Wilson refused to release Adam despite their show of force? Jasper Wilson himself was waiting on the porch of his house as they rode into the yard. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with meticulously groomed dark hair and cold eyes that had always made Abigail uncomfortable. Thomas, he called, descending the steps, and the lovely Miss Keller. How kind of you to accept my invitation. This isn't a social call, Wilson, Thomas replied gruffly. We're here for Evans, as agreed. Wilson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, but won't you dismount, have some refreshments? It's a hot day for riding. We'll stay mounted, Thomas said firmly. Bring Evans out and we'll be on our way. Wilson's smile faltered slightly. Always in such a rush, Thomas. Very well. He signaled to Dawson, who disappeared into a nearby building, returning moments later with Adam. Abigail's heart clenched at the sight of him. His face was bruised, and he walked with a slight limp, but his eyes were clear and alert. When he saw her, something flickered across his features, relief perhaps, or something deeper. "Evans," Wilson called, his voice carrying an edge of mockery. "Your employers have come to collect you, though I must say you've been a disappointment as a worker, barely worth keeping even for a day." Adam said nothing, his jaw tight as he came to stand beside Wilson. "Release him," Thomas demanded. "We've met your terms." Wilson raised an eyebrow. "Have you? I don't recall agreeing to anything with you, Thomas. My arrangement was with Miss Keller. Perhaps she should be the one to state her case." All eyes turned to Abigail. She straightened in her saddle, meeting Wilson's gaze without flinching. "Mr. Wilson, we're here as agreed. Please honor your word and release Mr. Evans to our custody." Wilson's smile widened, becoming predatory. "Custody? My, such formal language for a ranch hand. One might almost think he means something to you, Miss Keller." Abigail felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her voice steady. "Mr. Evans is a valued employee of the Keller Ranch. His well-being is important to us." "Is that all he is?" Wilson pressed, taking a step closer to her horse. "Because I've heard interesting reports from my men who patrol our shared boundary. Reports of early morning meetings, of intimate lessons with a lasso." Adam tensed visibly, taking a half-step forward before Dawson's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "That's enough, Wilson," Thomas growled. "Our business arrangement with our hands is none of your concern. Now release Evans, or we'll take this matter to the sheriff." Wilson's expression hardened. "The sheriff, by all means, involve him. I'm sure he'd be interested to know about your daughter's nocturnal visit to my property 2 nights ago. Trespassing is still a crime in Wyoming territory, isn't it?" Abigail's blood ran cold, so they had been spotted after all. Thomas's hand moved subtly toward his gun. "Are you threatening my daughter, Wilson?" The tension in the yard was palpable, both sides poised on the edge of violence. Adam's eyes met Abigail's, a silent warning in them. "Not at all," Wilson said smoothly, stepping back. "Merely stating facts." "But I'm a reasonable man. Evans can go. I've made my point." He nodded to Dawson, who released his grip on Adam's shoulder. Adam moved immediately, crossing the yard to the Kellers without looking back. One of the ranch hands dismounted, offering his horse to Adam, who climbed into the saddle with a wince of pain. "This isn't over, Wilson," Thomas said, his voice low and dangerous. Wilson's smile returned, cold and confident. "On that, Thomas, we agree completely." The ride back to the Keller ranch was silent, everyone tense and watchful, half expecting Wilson's men to follow. It wasn't until they were safely within their own boundaries that Abigail allowed herself to release the breath she'd been holding. "Are you all right?" she asked Adam, guiding her horse alongside his. He nodded, though the movement seemed to cause him pain. "Nothing that won't heal. I've had worse from breaking wild horses." "What happened?" Thomas asked from Adam's other side. "Wilson said you'd been a disappointment as a worker." A grim smile touched Adam's lips. "I refuse to share information about your ranch operations. Dawson took exception to my loyalty." Thomas's expression softened with respect. "You could have told them something, saved yourself the beating." "Wouldn't have been right," Adam said simply. "You gave me a fair chance when I needed it. I don't repay that with betrayal." They reached the ranch house, where Mrs. Hannigan was waiting anxiously on the porch. She fussed over Adam immediately, insisting on treating his injuries despite his protests that they were minor. Later that evening, after Adam had been patched up and sent to rest in the bunkhouse, Thomas called Abigail into his study. "Wilson knows," he said without preamble, "about you and Evans." "There is no me and Evans, Pa," Abigail replied, though she couldn't quite meet his eyes. "He's been teaching me to rope, that's all." Thomas studied his daughter's face. "Is it? Because the way you looked at him today, the way you insisted on riding to Wilson's despite the danger that suggests something more than lessons, Abby." Abigail sank into a chair, suddenly weary. "I don't know what it is, Pa. I just know that when Adam was in trouble, I couldn't stand by and do nothing." "You care for him," Thomas said, not a question but a statement. "Yes," she admitted softly. "I think I do." Thomas sighed, rubbing his weathered face. "Wilson will use that against us. He's always wanted you, and now he'll see Evans as a rival." "Adam isn't courting me," Abigail pointed out. Doesn't matter, Thomas replied. In Wilson's mind, Evans has taken something he wanted. That makes him dangerous. What do? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. We stay vigilant. Double the guards on the boundary with Wilson's land. And you, he fixed her with a stern look, you need to be careful around Evans. Pa, I'm not saying stay away from him, Thomas clarified. Just be mindful of appearances. The last thing we need is Wilson spreading rumors about you in town. Abigail nodded, understanding her father's concern. In a place like Wyoming territory, a woman's reputation was fragile, easily damaged by gossip. And Abigail, Thomas added, his voice softening, if there is something between you and Evans. Well, he's proven himself a man of character. I won't stand in the way of that. Surprised and touched by her father's understanding, Abigail crossed the room to embrace him. Thank you, Pa. As she prepared for bed that night, Abigail found her thoughts returning to Adam, his bruised face, the way he'd stood tall despite his injuries, the look in his eyes when he'd seen her at Wilson's ranch. There was something there, something beyond friendship or the relationship between employer and employee. She just wasn't sure if she was brave enough to find out what it was. Adam recovered quickly from his ordeal at Wilson's ranch, returning to his duties within days, though Abigail noticed he still favored his left side when lifting heavy loads. Their roping lessons resumed, but there was a new tension between them, unspoken questions, moments when their eyes would meet and linger before one of them looked away. A week after Adam's return, Abigail was in the stable brushing Penny when he appeared in the doorway. Your father mentioned you might be here, he said, stepping inside. I wanted to thank you properly for coming after me. Abigail continued brushing, not trusting herself to look at him directly. Anyone would have done the same. No, Adam said quietly, moving closer. They wouldn't have. You risked a lot coming to Wilson's that night. She finally turned to face him, the brush still in her hand. You risked more for Billy. It seemed only fair. Adam's eyes searched hers, something unreadable in their depths. Is that the only reason you came? Fairness. The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Abigail felt her heart quicken as Adam took another step toward her. No, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. That wasn't the only reason. Adam reached out slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, and gently took the brush from her hand, setting it aside. What was the other reason, Abigail? The way he said her name soft, almost reverent, made her breath catch. Before she could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the moment. They stepped apart just as one of the younger ranch hands entered the stable. Miss Keller, your pa's looking for you, the boy announced. Says there's a telegram from town. Thank you, Jimmy, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. I'll be right there. The boy nodded and left, oblivious to the tension he'd interrupted. I should go, Abigail said, not meeting Adam's eyes. Abigail, he called softly as she reached the stable door. We'll finish this conversation. Soon. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and hurried toward the main house. The telegram was from the sheriff, announcing his return to town and his intention to visit the Keller ranch the following day to discuss the situation with Wilson. Thomas spent the evening strategizing how best to present their case, while Abigail found herself distracted, her thoughts repeatedly drifting to the moment in the stable with Adam. What would have happened if Jimmy hadn't interrupted? What was she prepared to admit to Adam and to herself? The sheriff arrived mid-morning the next day, a grizzled man named Harker who had known Thomas for years. He listened carefully as Thomas explained the situation with Wilson, occasionally jotting notes in a small book. So Wilson detained your hand under false pretenses, Harker summarized, and only released him when pressured by the bank. That's right, Thomas confirmed. Billy was never rustling, he was checking our shared fence line, which is his job, the sheriff sighed, closing his notebook. It's not the first complaint I've had about Wilson. Man seems to think he's above the law because his daddy was one of the first settlers in these parts. Will you speak to him? Abigail asked from her seat by the fireplace. Harker nodded. I'll pay him a visit this afternoon. Make it clear that detaining men under false accusations won't be tolerated. But I should warn you, both Wilson has friends in the territorial government. This might not end with my visit. We understand, Thomas said grimly. We just want to ensure there are no further incidents." After the sheriff departed, Adam found Abigail on the front porch where she was shelling peas for dinner. "How did it go with Harker?" he asked, leaning against the porch railing. "He seems to believe us," she replied, focusing on her task. "But he warned that Wilson has powerful friends." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "Wilson isn't the type to let things go easily. He'll be planning something." "Pa thinks the same," Abigail admitted. "He's worried Wilson might try to damage our reputation in town, spread rumors about." She trailed off, realizing too late what she was about to reveal. "About," Adam prompted, moving to sit beside her on the bench. Abigail set the bowl of peas aside, gathering her courage. "About us. Wilson seems to believe there's something between us beyond roping lessons." "And what do you believe?" Adam asked quietly. Their eyes met, and Abigail found she couldn't look away. "I believe that when you were in danger, I felt something I've never felt before. Fear, yes, but also determination. The thought of not seeing you again was unbearable." Adam's expression softened, a warmth lighting his eyes. "I felt the same when I saw you at Wilson's ranch. All I could think was that I needed to get back to you to tell you." He hesitated, and Abigail found herself holding her breath. "Tell me what?" she whispered. Adam reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "That you've become more important to me than I ever expected. That those mornings teaching you to throw a lasso have been the happiest of my life. That when you ride out to check the herd, I find myself watching until you disappear from sight." Abigail's heart soared at his words, a smile breaking across her face. "I've never met anyone like you, Adam. Someone who sees me as I am, who doesn't try to change me or shield me from the realities of ranch life." "I wouldn't dare try to change you," he replied with a soft laugh. "You're perfect exactly as you are, stubborn, brave, determined to master every skill a rancher needs." His free hand came up to gently brush a strand of hair from her face, the touch sending a shiver down her spine. "Abigail," he murmured, "I know I'm just a ranch hand with little to offer, but don't," she interrupted, placing her fingers lightly against his lips. "Don't diminish yourself. You're the most honorable man I've ever known." Their faces were inches apart now, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Adam leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. Abigail responded immediately, her hand moving to his shoulder as she returned the kiss with a certainty that surprised even her. It was brief but perfect, a promise of something deeper, something lasting. When they parted, Adam's eyes were filled with wonder. "I've been wanting to do that since the first time I showed you how to throw a lasso." Abigail laughed softly. "Is that why you kept finding excuses to stand so close?" "You caught me," he admitted with a grin, then sobered. "But Abigail, your father, the ranch, there will be consequences if we pursue this. Wilson already suspects, and he'll use it against us if he can." "I know," she sighed. "But Pa actually surprised me. He said he wouldn't stand in our way if there was something between us. He respects you, especially after what happened at Wilson's." Adam looked stunned. "Thomas Keller approves of a ranch hand courting his daughter. I never thought I'd see the day." "Courting, are you?" Abigail teased, her eyes sparkling. "I don't recall being asked." Adam laughed, the sound rich and warm in the afternoon air. "Miss Abigail Keller, would you do me the honor of allowing me to court you properly? With your father's permission, of course." "I would be delighted, Mr. Adam Evans," she replied with a mock formality that quickly dissolved into another smile. "Though I expect those roping lessons to continue, I'm still not as good as you." "I don't know about that," he said softly. "You caught me easily enough." The sound of approaching horses interrupted their moment. Thomas and several hands were returning from checking the far pastures. Abigail and Adam moved slightly apart, though they remained seated together on the bench. Thomas dismounted, handing his reins to one of the men, and approached the porch. His sharp eyes took in their proximity, their clasped hands, and the unmistakable happiness on both their faces. "I see you two have come to an understanding," he observed dryly. Adam stood, respectfully addressing Thomas. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to court your daughter." Thomas studied Adam for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Then, to Abigail's relief, he nodded once. You've proven yourself a man of character, Evans. I won't stand in your way. A smile broke across Adam's face. Thank you, sir. I promise I'll be worthy of her. See that you are, Thomas replied, his tone serious despite the twinkle in his eye. And remember, ranch work comes first. We've got cattle to move next week. Yes, sir, Adam agreed readily. As Thomas moved past them into the house, he paused to squeeze Abigail's shoulder, gently, a silent message of support that meant more to her than words could express. The following weeks were some of the happiest of Abigail's life. Word of her courtship with Adam spread quickly among the ranch hands, who accepted it with knowing smiles and good-natured teasing. Their morning roping lessons continued, though now they were punctuated with stolen kisses and conversations about their hopes for the future. Adam, she discovered, had dreams of someday having his own small ranch, nothing as grand as the Keller spread, but enough land to run some cattle and raise a family. Abigail found herself easily picturing such a life with him, their skills complementing each other as they built something together. The only shadow on their happiness was Jasper Wilson. The sheriff's visit had seemingly put him in check for the moment, but both Thomas and Adam remained wary, increasing patrols along their shared boundary and instructing the hands to travel in pairs when near Wilson land. Their caution proved warranted when, 3 weeks after Adam and Abigail began courting, one of their best breeding bulls was found dead near the boundary, a bullet hole cleanly through its head. Wilson, Thomas growled when the hands brought him the news. Has to be. That bull was worth more than most men make in a year. Can we prove it? Abigail asked, her hand finding Adam's for support. Thomas shook his head grimly. Bullet could have come from anyone's gun, and Wilson will have made sure he has an alibi. What do we do? Adam asked, his arm protectively around Abigail's shoulders. We stay vigilant, Thomas decided. Double the guards on the herd, and we accelerate our plans to move the cattle to the north pasture, away from Wilson's boundary. The next day, as preparations for moving the herd were underway, a rider approached from town. It was the banker, Mr. Peterson, looking troubled as he dismounted in the yard. Thomas, he greeted solemnly, I'm afraid I have concerning news. Thomas led Peterson into the house with Abigail and Adam following. Once they were seated in the study, Peterson revealed the reason for his visit. Wilson has acquired a significant loan from a bank in Cheyenne, he explained. He's using it to buy up land all around your property. What? Thomas exclaimed. I thought you said he was in financial trouble. He was, Peterson confirmed. But someone's backing him now, someone with deep pockets and a desire to see Wilson succeed. Who? Abigail asked, a sense of dread growing in her stomach. Peterson shook his head. The bank in Cheyenne is being tight-lipped about the investor. But whoever it is, they've given Wilson enough capital to potentially surround the Keller ranch completely, cutting us off from water rights and access routes, Thomas realized, his face paling. He's trying to choke us out. It would appear so, Peterson agreed somberly. I thought you should know immediately. After Peterson left, Thomas paced the study, his expression thunderous. This is about you, he said to Abigail. Wilson can't have you, so he's determined to destroy what you love instead. What can we do? She asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Fight back, Thomas replied firmly. We've weathered droughts, blizzards, and rustlers. We'll weather Jasper Wilson too. Adam, who had been quietly contemplative, spoke up. There might be another option. When I worked for Wilson, I overheard him speaking about some business dealings that seemed irregular. If there's evidence of wrongdoing, perhaps the investor from Cheyenne could be persuaded to withdraw support. Thomas regarded Adam with renewed interest. What kind of irregularities? Cattle with brands that didn't match his herd register. Conversations about shipments that never appeared in the official ledgers. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now. Now it could be our leverage, Thomas finished, but we'd need proof. The ledgers would be in his office, Adam said, and I know where he keeps them. Abigail looked at him with alarm. You're not suggesting breaking into Wilson's ranch after what happened last time? Not me, Adam clarified. The sheriff. If we can convince Harker there's reason to suspect illegal activities, he might get a warrant to search Wilson's office. Thomas nodded slowly, a plan forming. Peterson might help too. Banks don't like being associated with anything shady. if we can plant enough doubt. Over the next few days, they worked carefully to build their case. Thomas spoke with Sheriff Harker, framing their concerns as worries about the regional cattle market rather than a personal vendetta against Wilson. Adam wrote down everything he could remember about the suspicious activities he'd witnessed, and Peterson discreetly inquired about Wilson's business practices among other ranchers. Their efforts bore fruit when one of Wilson's former hands, now working at her ranch 20 miles away, confirmed Adam's suspicions. Wilson had indeed been involved in rustling operations, using his legitimate ranch as cover for a more lucrative illegal business. Armed with this testimony, Sheriff Harker obtained a warrant to search Wilson's office and records. The raid occurred while Wilson was in Cheyenne meeting with his mysterious investor, giving the sheriff unimpeded access to the evidence they sought. What they found exceeded even their expectations: detailed records of stolen cattle, names of accomplices, and evidence of bribes paid to officials to look the other way. Wilson had been building his criminal enterprise for years, growing increasingly bold as he evaded consequences. The news spread quickly through the territory. Wilson returned from Cheyenne to find himself arrested at the train station, his ranch temporarily seized as evidence. The mysterious investor, revealed to be a wealthy cattle baron from Colorado with his own questionable reputation, hastily withdrew his support, leaving Wilson to face the consequences alone. For the Keller ranch, it was a vindication sweeter than they could have imagined. Not only was the threat to their land neutralized, but Wilson's disgrace meant his properties would likely be sold at auction, possibly at prices the Kellers could afford to expand their own holdings. One evening a week after Wilson's arrest, as the summer sun painted the western sky in shades of gold and crimson, Abigail found Adam at their usual practice spot, absently twirling a lasso as he gazed toward the mountains. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, coming to stand beside him. He smiled, looping the rope over his shoulder. "Just thinking about how much has changed in a few months. When I rode onto this ranch looking for work, I never imagined that you'd help bring down a criminal enterprise," she suggested with a teasing smile. "Or that you'd be courting the boss's daughter." "Both," he admitted, drawing her into his arms, "especially the latter. You're still the most unexpected thing that's ever happened to me, Abigail Keller." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you remember the first time you helped me throw a lasso, when you put your arm over mine? I remember thinking I was the luckiest man in Wyoming territory," he murmured into her hair, "and trying very hard to focus on the lesson rather than how perfectly you fit against me." Abigail laughed softly. "I was so flustered I could barely pay attention to your instructions, and yet you learned quickly," he observed. "Now you can rope a steer almost as well as I can." "Almost," she pulled back, arching an eyebrow in challenge. "Care to test that theory, Mr. Evans?" His eyes sparkled with amusement. "What did you have in mind?" "A competition," she proposed. "Tomorrow, during the cattle drive to the north pasture, first one to successfully rope a designated steer wins." "And what does the winner get?" Adam asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. Abigail pretended to consider this seriously. "If I win, you have to take me on a proper outing to town dinner at the hotel restaurant, perhaps." "And if I win?" he prompted. She met his gaze steadily, her voice softening. "If you win, you have to marry me." Adam's eyes widened in surprise before his expression melted into one of such tenderness it made her heart ache. "That's hardly fair," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're asking me to lose on purpose. Who says I won't win fair and square?" She challenged, though her own voice wavered with feeling. Adam shook his head, wonder in his eyes. "Abigail Keller, are you proposing to me?" "I believe I am," she confirmed, surprised by her own boldness yet certain of her heart. "Unless you'd prefer to do it the traditional way." In answer, Adam knelt before her in the dust of the practice yard, taking her hands in his. "I was saving for a ring," he admitted. "Planning to ask your father's blessing formally next month when I had enough set aside." "You don't need a ring," Abigail assured him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Just your heart and your promise." "You have both now and always," he vowed. Abigail Keller, will you marry me, not because you lost a roping competition, but because I love you more than I ever thought possible? Yes, she whispered, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. Yes, I will marry you, Adam Evans. Their kiss sealed the promise, tender and joyful under the painted sky of Wyoming. When they finally parted, Adam pressed his forehead to hers, his voice low and earnest. I still don't have much to offer beyond my hands and my heart, he said. Your father's ranch will still be here, she assured him. Pa's not ready to retire yet, and when he is, we'll figure it out together. Maybe by then we'll have our own small place too, just as you dreamed. Adam's smile was radiant. As long as I have you by my side, I can face anything this wild country throws at us. Even a wife who can now rope as well as you can, she teased. Especially that, he laughed. Though I still say I'm better. We'll settle that tomorrow, Abigail promised. For now, let's go tell Pa the news. Thomas received their announcement with a mixture of gruff emotion and practical concerns, but his blessing was wholehearted. The wedding was set for the autumn, after the main work of the season was complete, a practical consideration that neither Abigail nor Adam minded. It gave them time to prepare, and for Adam to build up some savings of his own. The day of the cattle drive dawned clear and cool, a perfect September morning with just a hint of the coming fall in the air. The entire ranch was involved in moving the herd to the northern pasture, where they would graze until the first snows drove them back to the sheltered valleys near the ranch house. True to their agreement, Abigail and Adam made their competition the highlight of the day, with Thomas and the other hands serving as judges. The target was a young steer with distinctive markings, fast and clever enough to make the challenge worthwhile. Abigail went first, her Palomino mare moving easily alongside the steer as she built her loop. Every lesson, every morning practice session came together as she swung the lasso with confident precision. The rope sailed through the air, landing perfectly around the steer's neck on her first attempt. The hands cheered appreciatively as she secured her catch, her father's proud smile warming her heart. Adam was next, mounting his stallion with easy grace. He gave Abigail a wink as he rode past her, confidence in every line of his body. His throw was equally perfect, the lasso seeming to extend from his arm as a natural part of him. The steer was caught cleanly, with a flourish that spoke of years of experience. I'd call that a tie, Thomas declared when Adam returned to the group. Both clean catches, first attempt. Then I guess we both win, Abigail said, her eyes meeting Adam's with a happiness that needed no words. I certainly feel like a winner, Adam agreed softly. That evening, as the ranch celebrated the successful drive with a bonfire and impromptu dance, Adam pulled Abigail away from the festivities for a quiet moment alone. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. It's not much, but... He opened his hand to reveal a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone set in the center. It was my mother's, he explained. The only thing of hers I have left. My father gave it to me before he died, said I should give it to the woman who captured my heart as completely as my mother captured his. Tears filled Abigail's eyes as she held out her hand, allowing Adam to slip the ring onto her finger. It's perfect, she whispered. I'll treasure it always. They sealed the moment with a kiss that promised a lifetime of love, built on a foundation as strong as the Wyoming land they both cherished. The wedding took place on a golden October day, with the aspen trees blazing yellow against the blue Wyoming sky. The entire ranch gathered to witness the union, along with friends from neighboring spreads and townsfolk who had come to respect the Keller family over the years. Abigail wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Hannigan had helped her make, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a formal veil. Adam stood tall and proud in a new suit, his eyes never leaving Abigail as she walked toward him on her father's arm. Their vows were straightforward and heartfelt, promises to love and support each other through whatever challenges the frontier life might bring. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was tender yet passionate, a perfect reflection of their relationship. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed a small army. As the evening drew to a close, Thomas pulled the newlyweds aside for a private word. "Wedding gift," he said gruffly, pressing a folded document into Adam's hand. "Deed to the east section of the ranch, 500 acres, including that stretch along the creek you were admiring last month." Adam stared at the paper in shock. "Thomas, we can't accept this. You can and you will," Thomas interrupted firmly. "It's still part of the Keller Ranch, but it'll be your home, a place to build your own legacy while still being part of mine." Abigail embraced her father, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Pa, this means everything." "Just promise me grandchildren to inherit it all someday," Thomas replied with a rare smile. "A ranch this size needs multiple generations to keep it thriving." "We'll do our best," Adam promised, his arm secure around Abigail's waist. That night, as they retired to the small cabin that would be their temporary home until they could build on their new land, Abigail reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "It all started with a lasso," she mused as Adam built a fire in the small hearth. "Who would have thought a simple roping lesson could lead to this?" Adam straightened, crossing the room to take her in his arms. "I knew from that first moment," he admitted. "When I put my arm over yours and felt how perfectly we fit together. Some things are just meant to be." Abigail Evans. "Abigail Evans," she repeated, savoring the sound of her new name. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," he murmured, lowering his head to capture her lips in a kiss that spoke of all the days and nights that lay ahead, a lifetime of love, born from a simple lesson with a lasso on a Wyoming morning. 2 years later, on another golden autumn day, Abigail stood on the porch of the home she and Adam had built on their land, watching as he demonstrated roping techniques to a group of young ranch hands. Their house wasn't grand, a simple but sturdy structure with plenty of room for the family they hoped to build, but it was theirs, filled with love and the promise of the future. As she observed, her hand rested gently on her swollen belly, feeling the movement of the child that would arrive before winter set in. Their first child, the beginning of the next generation that would someday inherit the Keller Evans Ranch. Adam caught sight of her watching and excused himself from the lesson, crossing the yard with the easy stride that still made her heart skip a beat. "How are my two favorite people doing?" he asked, placing his hand over hers on her belly. "Restless," she replied with a smile. "This little one seems to have inherited your energy. And your determination, no doubt," he added, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Pa rode over earlier, says the new calves are doing well and the harvest is nearly complete." In the 2 years since their wedding, the relationship between Adam and Thomas had evolved from employer-employee to father and son, a bond strengthened by their shared love for Abigail and the land. The original Keller Ranch and the Evans section operated as one unit, with Adam gradually taking on more responsibility as Thomas began to slow down. "I was thinking," Abigail said, leaning into her husband's embrace, "that we should start teaching this little one to throw a lasso as soon as they can walk." Adam laughed, the sound still her favorite music. "Following family tradition, exactly," she nodded. After all, you never know where a simple roping lesson might lead. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long shadows across their land, Adam drew his wife close, his arm around her shoulders in an echo of that first embrace years ago. "I love you, Abigail Evans," he murmured, "more with each passing day." "And I love you," she replied, turning in his arms to meet his gaze, "my cowboy teacher who showed me not just how to throw a lasso, but how to open my heart." Their lips met in a kiss that still held all the wonder of their first, a testament to a love born on the wild Wyoming plains, a love as enduring as the land itself, and just as beautiful.